Hello everyone, I'm James Milan, here today for a conversation with Ukumbwa Sauti. Ukumbwa is a friend of ACMi's who has appeared on various programs with us and for us before, and we're very much looking forward to talking to him today about a very ambitious undertaking, the World Ancestor Concert, scheduled to take place in fall of 2017, and we're going to be finding out all about it from Ukumbwa today. Ukumbwa, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, James.
We want to all, I want to begin by saying I salute you for even taking on a project of these proportions, and we'll get into the details in a little bit. But I was originally going to be describing, what you do, and I realized, there are any number of different ways to do so. I should let you do it.
Okay.
So why don't we start by just you telling us what do you do? Where are you coming from?
Well, for the last 16 years or so, I've been teaching in higher education and teaching media studies, video production, and other media, some electronic music, things like that. One of the focuses of my work has always been social issues. Politics, culture, things like that. So there's always been that kind of thread within my educational work. I've been involved in social activism, things like that, different levels of political work throughout my time. And also, I've gone into a lot of spiritual work on my own. I've done some work with Malidoma Some and a group at East Coast Village that works with the culture of the Dagara people from West Africa. And a number of years ago, I was initiated as an elder within that tradition. So the things that I do are informed by all of that, particularly by my spiritual underpinnings and overpinnings, if you will. But a lot by that experience of looking at the world through the lens of media, seeing how we treat each other, what kinds of historical things are still going on in the world today, what the relationships between people are, our relationships with the earth, things like that.
Yeah, so in my mind, as an introduction, I was thinking, cultural media studies professor,
exactly.
Social activist, spiritual seeker, musician, I believe, as well, right?
There's that too. Yeah.
So I can see how all those threads can get distilled into a project that one could call, in this case, World Ancestor Concert.
Exactly.
So just tell us. I know that you are one of the founders of this project and event. So tell us what's the genesis of it, and how many of you are working away on this right now? Just give us a little background about the concert.
Right, we will. Yes, thank you. Really, it comes back to a story we tell on our website about being around a fire at East Coast Village. We had just done some ritual work. As I remember it, it was some things around the ancestors. Around ritual around our ancestors. Raising them up, revering them, having a conversation with them, calling them into our healing space, calling them into presence to help us out with the challenges that we have in our life. And so sitting around the fire, which in the Dagara tradition is the portal to the ancestors, we're just in community at that moment. And as we were talking about, how do we bring awareness of the ancestors back into focus, for in the modern world, and being a musician, of course, it started to ruminate in my brain about creating a concert that would within which the ancestors would be a main context. So out of that conversation, I began to develop the idea for this, and talked about well, who are these artists and musicians who are saying things that are about the world, who are bringing forth not only their culture, say traditional cultures from around the world or from an indigenous point of view, but who are saying things that are meaningful in the world. Because one of the things that we've learned about our ancestors is that they want the best for us. And we can say that whether we're talking about Malcolm X or Boudica, you know, or I wish I could remember the woman that whose statue replaced the Columbus statue, I believe in Venezuela. I wish I could come up with that name, forgive me. But you know, whether we're talking about them or whether we're talking about someone who passed on maybe last year, that kind of thing, our ancestors generally want the best for us. And because there are so many traditions around the world that engage our ancestors, whether on a level of, say, deep spirituality and ritual and ceremony, or in just remembering them, creating an ancestor shrine, or just having pictures up over the mantle or something like that, or on a table, that we call their energies forward to bring healing, to bring balance, to remember the things that they wanted for us, to remember the traditions that they created, to remember the ways that they related to each other and created beauty and peace and justice in the world. Yes, we have ancestors that created other things, that created negative relationships between us, whether directly or historically and in a larger context. But I would say largely our ancestors want the best for all of us. That's what they are agitating for on the other side for us. They're our best advocates. Mm-hmm. And to bring them forward, to even just say what are the good things that they created in the world is good grist for the mill, and is a good way for us to continue forward in the world as we try to create solutions for the things that challenge us the most deeply in the world right now.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, especially because my own reaction might be mirrored by those of others in hearing World Ancestor Concert. What would that be about? Is that about history? Is it about going backwards? No, it sounds a lot more like what you're saying is that it is about recognizing and appreciating and validating the work, but more than anything, the wishes, as you say, of our historical forebears for us in our current situation, in our current plight. And, well, I think of it as a plight, others might not.
Yeah, plight is a good word, you know, because that's part of our experience right now in the world. And, you know, oppression is a big part of what happens to a lot of people. And even on a level of looking at how modern culture has taken us to a point where we become consumers instead of creators of culture, you know, and consumers of material things rather than creators of material culture that actually supports humanity in a beautiful way. And when we look at traditional cultures, and when we look at the beauty of things that our ancestors have created, we start to see things that not only acknowledge, say, women in our lives and what the divine feminine used to be and still is in many, many cultures, but also how they define our relationships with the earth, with sacred waters, you know, with the mountains, with the trees, with animals, with each other. You know, how have we created and how have our ancestors created contexts, cultural contexts that help us really to move forward in a way that's more beautiful. And we can even point to the process of the Haudenosaunee and what many people call the Iroquois Confederacy that created a context in which the colonists, and many people would call colonizers who came to Turtle Island or to North America and other parts of the Western Hemisphere, took these ideas from the Haudenosaunee and created a context for what we now call democracy. But what that actually was, you know, we would say that that became distorted. And I'm speaking gently about it right now, but that there are these traditions of peacemaking, of allowing people to work together in a way that really behooves us to look at that again, to acknowledge that that certain people's ancestors have done some really powerful things in the world, and that they are a great example of how we can move forward in the world, and that we should really look to our ancestors to look at some of the great things that they've created for us and how we can move forward in a world that's very, very challenging right now. And I don't think anyone would disagree with us on that one. But that we have some solutions that are already there. And maybe particularly, say, from a woman named Akisimini Forrest, who started to do some research on the council ways around the world. And to see how people sat in council to come to consensus about things, which is a much longer process than our modern world says, well, we just have to get to the business of getting it done. That we are more interested now in getting to the end of a thing than being peaceful and acknowledging each other's humanity along the process of it. And that's one of the things our ancestors did very well, was looked at the process of things so that we didn't rush to judgment, we didn't rush to action, because that's exactly what comes to an oppressive relationship with other people in our societies and in other societies. So there's a lot that we can mine from our histories, which I would say is a very personal thing. I was thinking about it just recently again, that history is personal because our ancestors were there. And we're a product of them, So history has to be taken personally.
Several things that you referenced in what you were just saying go to the theme of this of this inaugural World Ancestor Concert. Let us say that. Hopefully, it will be just the first of many.
Yeah, we hope so.
But anyway, what is that theme, and flesh it out for us a little bit?
Well, the theme is women, water, and peace. We felt that was important because around the world, women's voices, though they are very, very powerful, very, very strong, are under attack by patriarchy, historical patriarchy, and present patriarchy. So we thought it was important that those voices have yet another place to be heard, to be expressed, and to allow the rest of the world, not only men, but other women, to hear those voices and to see what powerful things women are doing in the world, whether historically or right now on the ground. And also to acknowledge the women who are part of our history, our human history, that have created amazing things, amazing cultural traditions, and who have done powerful, powerful things, so that we can then again take that forward. Again, yes, looking back, like the Sankofa idea that comes out of West Africa. The Sankofa bird flies forward while looking back. So that we're always pulling our history forward, so that we can be the best that we can always be. So that theme of women, water, and peace, again, we feel is important because also water is central to human life and to the life of the earth. As Vandana Shiva says, the water is the blood of the earth. And she's done a lot of work around, raising the issue of that dams that modern culture has created, and capitalism and colonialism has created, are actually sort of the heart attack, ready to happen, of the earth. So many people are now taking down some of these dams that have created this unhealthy relationship between humans and the earth, and the unhealthy nature that earth is coming to, again, that humans have created. So women, water, and peace. Now, peace is a thing, I think, that is an element in the earth that a lot of people can talk about, but I think that we haven't systematized it like we have war. So I think it's yet another thing that we can bring to the forefront and actually talk about. And if we talk about women and water, and if we're actually acknowledging women and water, just those two elements in the world, let alone a number of other things, we can really see how the peace process is about acknowledging all of the voices in the world, acknowledging the voices that are marginalized, that are shut down, like the voice, that Malala brings, out of the oppression that she experienced and the brutal attack that was meted out upon her. Her voice that is coming out into this world, the voices of African women, the voice of women of color, particularly, say, in the Black Lives Matter movement. Those kinds of voices that are out there, but of course we need to listen to and be really present with. So the theme of women, water, and peace, we feel, is very central. And even as we were starting to talk about, well, what would the second year's theme be? It has to be women, water, and peace. It still has to be women, water, and peace.
Right.
Because we're not going to,
Maybe
no one's going to fix it in a year.
Right, and you might expand
Right.
upon it, but,
Right,
but you're going to
right.
have that as your base as well.
Right, and come and add it in a different way. But that those elements are really key to the life of the earth. If we don't acknowledge women and the sacred path of women and the political path of women and the social path of women, we're not going to be doing very well. And I might even say we're doomed. And that's, I didn't want to be melodramatic, but it's true. It's very true.
When I think of that theme also, women, water, and peace, I can't help but think that all three things arguably are under siege in our present world,
Right.
in different ways and to different degrees, perhaps one might say.
Exactly.
But each one of them not exactly endangered, but under siege. Is that part of also what you were the illumination of this?
Yeah.
Of these elements that you're looking to do through the concert?
Exactly, yeah, and actually each of those has a voice. Women, water, and peace all have a voice. The water has a voice, women have a voice, and peace has a voice, but we're not listening. We're not listening fully. And we can see it if we see the voices of women, say on any given blog post or something like that. We see the attacks that happen when women speak powerfully about their experience, about their work, about their points of view. And we see that happening, say with Standing Rock, the voice of water, and how people had come together, all the indigenous nations came together in an unprecedented way at Standing Rock, in such a powerful, beautiful, prayerful, peaceful way, and how that was literally, figuratively, militarily under attack at that time, and is still to this day under attack. Not only there, but across the globe. So the voice of water has to be listened to. We do need to shine a light on it, as central as it is to everyone. No one can live more than a day or so, I think it is, without water. We can go longer without food, but not without water. We're 75% water. The earth is 75% water. It should be, if, as we say, a no-brainer, but we're not living with that in our heart. We're not living with women in our heart. We're not living with water in our heart, nor with peace in our heart, because we do have cultures of war. We do have industries of war. We don't have industries of peace. We don't have narratives of peace, though I enjoy a good action film too. But I think we not only spend too much time watching things blow up and being okay with things blowing up and people being shot, particularly women and people of color, being targeted in that way in our narratives. But we don't have these narratives of peace and of empowerment, and that's what the World Ancestor Concert hopes to shine a light on. And I think that's a really great way of putting it. That we do want to help shine a light on the voices of women, on the activities of women, of people and cultures and cultural traditions that hold water in such a way that helps us to be healthy with it, and that helps the water to be healthy, and helps our water systems, whether they're in our body or on the earth, to be healthy, and to bring peace to a place where we're not thinking of it as some kind of woo-woo kind of thing that's not possible, because we have cultures that have held it in high regard, and we can remember that again if we look to our ancestors and look to some of the greatest things that they've created, like the conception of Ubuntu from Africa, that very simply stated, because we are, I am. That I cannot be here if the collective is here, and the collective cannot be here if the individual is not acknowledged. So which is a much different way of looking at the world than we have in our modern world right now.
So with a project of this scope, I would imagine that it's going to take quite a lot of organizational energy. Who do you have working with you on this?
Well, the main partner that I have, that I'm working with right now is Amy Coomer, and she's out in the Midwest. And we met actually through Facebook, and just because we were kind of connecting, crossing paths on certain, posts, things like that. It's like, here's this person, I appreciate where she's coming from, things like that. So we just started to talk. And so in our conversations, this came up, because we were talking about things of the world, talking about politics, things like that, spirituality. So she happened to particularly mention this one particular artist who I can't name right now, but because she named this person and what he was about and what his music is about, it's like, well, that's so funny, there's this process that, this concert that I've been talking about that he would be amazing for. This kind of thing. So we started talking about it, and so we started developing it together. So really, this connection, again brought together by, modern technology, through someone I would not have met otherwise, really gave new life, sparked this process open again. And so we've been developing this over a number of months, and we're working quite in concert together, Skyping almost all the time. Every day, and really developing this idea and what I think is, a very powerful process and meaningful process. So it wouldn't be what it is today without her input and without her having, connected.
So you had this seed of an idea that had been in your mind. Perhaps you'd been talking to some folks about it, friends, or it was germinating. Along she came with her water can, basically.
Right, basically, yeah, and said, and actually in my tradition, I'm water, in the water clan, and she comes from this very earth, based kind of energy. So in a sense, the seed of this concert, got watered by me in the earth of her, and here we are. So yeah, there's that metaphor is very real for us, and so yeah, it definitely has come to fruition at the level that it's at now because of the connection that we've been able to create.
Absolutely. And so how are things going? I know we are a number of months away, and I don't think that any specific dates have been set yet.
No, we had, and we were working on some specific dates in October, and we're really at the edge of not being able to meet that deadline right now. But we're in communication with one or two prospective sponsors that if those come together, we could make that happen. We believe we could make that happen in the fall. But we are looking at some dates and times in early 2018. One of the things with something like this, again, because of the scope of what we're looking at, because of the buy-in that we're actually asking, not only from our prospective artists and from our cultural partners, which we're still looking to communicate fully with them too, different organizations that we're interested in. And that's the only level we can say at this point with some of them, that we're interested in bringing certain groups into focus here, and let's say, groups like the Greenbelt Movement or...
What's the Greenbelt movement?
The Greenbelt Movement is a movement in Kenya started by Wangari Maathai, who is now an ancestor. But she was a powerful woman who started to see that one of the ways of empowering women would be to start planting trees, because she was starting to see how climate change is affecting, and colonialism is affecting the lives of women there in Kenya. So she started an effort to replant trees there, because she knew that was part of not only regenerating the earth, but creating work and political awareness around how women can be a part of not only regenerating the earth, but regenerating culture, regenerating their safety, their agency, from that point of view. So we feel, again, if we're lucky enough to get their participation, and at the very least, to create links on our website to say, hey, everybody, we need to look at what happened there and what they're doing right now, and the work that Wangari Maathai put into place in the world. Actually, a production company from Vermont did a great documentary on her, and if it's not on our website, we'll link it there. But work like that and cultural partners like that. So.
Well, I know that we cannot. Specifics aren't even, it wouldn't be appropriate, and then it's not even possible to talk about either specific artists or groups, et cetera. But how do you envision that it's a 3-day concert, how do you envision that unfolding? Assuming again that, let's assume best case scenario, it works out the way that you have been discussing and imagining. Paint us a picture of that.
Yeah, and I would say it's a really beautiful picture, and it's one that's taken a lot of work so far, but we know is going to be a labor of love and a labor of a lot of work and sweat. But we see that being a mixture of a number of different artists and groups from different cultural backgrounds that we're looking at and that we're in the process of creating relationship with. Some that are known more so around the world, some that are not known around the world, but that are giving voice not only to things in the human condition that speak to humanity in a particularly beautiful way, that are socially conscious, if you will, and progressive in their lyrics. So that's really important to us. So we see that as a mixture of that kind of music. Also to, in between those, to walk away to a talk set, to switch to a talk set where we have some of our cultural partners talking about some of the things that are important to them, whether it's issues of water, issues of women's agency and empowerment and liberation, youth empowerment and liberation on the third day of programming. There's about 6 hours of that programming that we want to focus on youth and children. And even the birth process itself. So there are many different segments that we have that are going to be music segments, that are going to be talk segments, opportunities for us to learn about what's going on around the world and to hear these voices in a beautiful way, to reference more of the work that's going on. Hopefully our website can be a resource also for that and our as we call our global media network. For people to see, what's going on around the world, but to really link that within the program itself, so that people not only get this communication about humanity through the music and dance, because that's also a big piece of this. And I can say that one of the people that we've talked to is a woman named Wyoma, who's an African dancer and healer and activist around fighting against female genital mutilation. And we're nothing but honored that she would give us, her time and focus at this time, at this early juncture. But people like that we want to bring into this mix. So seeing this as a real process of bringing out this very powerful music, very powerful testimony from activists and indigenous cultures, traditional cultures from around the world, and the kinds of programming that we're creating that we think is pretty powerful, part of which is what we call the calling of names on our second day of programming. And what it is not only music and dance, but just the naming of people from different parts of the world, calling their names, and whether that be, again, people like Boudica or Malcolm X or Sandra Bland or the people who died in France or in Nepal, or in the Oklahoma City bombing, the children who died there, when we think about that, oftentimes, Amy, my co-producer, and I come to tears as we Skype, because she's not in this area, so we know that there's the opportunity for us to come to a real emotional place of really seeing each other as human beings on a global level and on a personal level, whether that be from within our own cultural standpoint or looking out externally at other groups and other people around the world. So in that 3 days, we know it's going to be a very dynamic, powerful, beautiful, exciting, grief-inducing possibly at times, but very meaningful 3 days of what we call a global healing concert for the world.
Yeah, it's a very powerful vision indeed, as you describe it. I'm thinking how intriguing there are many aspects that are intriguing. One of them is that it is a global concert that is intended to connect us to our ancestors. Our ancestors, I think most people, their natural reaction in hearing that term is to think about ancient history, and the earliest ancestors, etc. But also you've talked about the the powerful presence throughout this event of indigenous peoples and giving voice to people who, to groups that don't often have those voices. Well, the mechanism for doing all of this stuff that has existed for thousands of years, the mechanism for doing that is ultra modern, ultra contemporary.
Completely.
And so that's an intriguing juxtaposition for me. How is it that you plan to, because I know that it's called a world concert in part because of all those who will be taking part will be representing different parts of the world, but also in that your audience, your intended audience, is a global audience as well.
For sure.
How is it that you're seeing that unfolding?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting, juxtaposition, and one of the mistakes that we make in our modern context is that when we think about indigenous and also when we think about traditional cultures, we often just continue to place them in the past. One of the things that many times indigenous peoples here, on Turtle Island or in North America have often said is that, the modern world, if you will, the colonial world, loves to see them in the 1800s. And actually, I'm kind of taking that from Adam Beach. I think he's going to be on Kamau Bell's show on CNN coming up soon. So I'm just referencing media again. But it's something that I've heard other people say too. And if you see a lot of the narratives that we see, even just about Native American or indigenous people here, it often shows them on the plains in some very stereotypical ways, often very negative kinds of ways. So we often want to put indigenous people into the past and keep them in the past. Indigenous people are very, very much alive right now and very active and using, if you will, what I like to call medium technologies, because I think the human being is the highest technology here, with all due respect to the cameras and to the internet. But I think our spiritual being, our intuitive being is a higher technology than that. But nonetheless, there are many, many people, women, indigenous people, oppressed people from around the world who are using these technologies to get the work done, to organize their societies, like the Warriors organization that comes out of Kenya, and I believe it's the Warriors organization. Please forgive me that I might be saying it wrong. It might be the Warriors Foundation. But they're using, an internet portal to talk about some of the indigenous cultures in Eastern Africa that are under pressure from commercialism, from even their own nations, and they're trying to sustain their own cultures, sustain their livelihoods, their histories, and their people, through reaching out through these technologies, things like that. So. We know that there sometimes are contradictions between the way these technologies have come forward, but it is a valid way for oppressed voices, marginalized voices to make themselves heard, and we know that, and we can use that to help create a space for understanding humanity in a deeper way, for understanding these cultures and our own traditions, our own ancestors in a new way, because we can Google our ancestors, we can go to some of the ancestry or DNA services online and say, hey, I need to know about myself, and check in online and be get their kits and stuff like that. So these technologies can help us to rekindle some of those awarenesses and some of that history, and we have an ability to learn that through our DNA also. The only way we do it is through the internet, we've missed it. Because culture and history lives inside of us. And that's some of the things that we hope to bring to the forefront also. That it's not just about information. It's about who we are and how we live our lives and how we feel, how those ancestors live in us, because we are the greatest creation of our ancestors. They did all of that to put us in this room together, to speak to each other, and hopefully to bring out some of the best work that we can create, whether it's your programs, whether it's the World Ancestor Concert, or whether it's the collective that we were talking about in Dorchester today that these women are creating now, or whether it's the Greenbelt movement, or whether it's the Bioneers organization or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see just from the absolute breadth of references that you have made to different people, different organizations, different time periods, different geographical areas. This is an idea that is not a 3-day idea. It's not a 3 days a year into perpetuity idea. It sounds like it's, it's something you could be thinking about, and you probably are every day.
Yeah. I work on it every day. We're trying to create it every day. And even though we're talking about our main concert that we want to have, the World Ancestor Concert, is a 3-day experience, we know it could be a 7-day experience if we could get the support to do it. But as we're looking at it and developing it now, it's a 3-day experience. But we know that we would, and we're actually working with some people in another part of the country to create a satellite event, a village event, if you will, that is basically the same context, but maybe at another scope. But it would have the same idea to connect people in that area with these same ideas, so that we not only see it as an annual event that hopefully will happen in different parts of the world and be staged in different parts of the world, but that we can support the process of creating more of these in different places, and not just as a place to get down and boogie. Now, that's a great thing. Our ancestors know how to get down and boogie, whether that's in Japan or Scotland. I say, drum cultures are funky cultures. And I've heard funky drums in Japan. I've heard them I've heard them from the Scottish Highlander bands, have some real funky drumming. And also in Brazil and and in Africa too. So be that as it may, these, we want to bring this, this forward in this way, to have people activated on different levels all the time. We want to create, part of what our company is creating, Moja Media Works, the production company, is messaging around this, and we want to do workshops in different places, whether they be at colleges and communities, to sustain the work over the whole year, and to bring people into a 365 consciousness of what all this work means. Just like we were saying, Mother's Day is not just for one day. Mother's Day is every day. Earth Day is every day.
Or should be, right.
Earth Day is every day. And if we're doing it right, to have that one day a year to celebrate all that is really worth it. And that's what we hope the World Ancestor Concert can be too, is a culmination and an illumination of the work that's going on anyway, but that we really need to be aware of, and that we need to hold space for, and that we really need to be supportive of in a different way.
Well, as you outline, what is truly, in a lot of ways, an inspiring image and aspiration for sure. I was also struck by a few little words that were in the answer just now, and that was, if we can find the support. So obviously, a great idea, and I do believe that this is a great idea, is not. That's not enough, right? That's not. That doesn't mean that. It's a great idea. Let's jump in.
Right.
What are the challenges that you already face that you can imagine going forward in terms of putting this together? How are you looking for the financial support you undoubtedly need?
Yeah, definitely. The price tag of it is a bit hefty, and we knew that going in. But we're also looking at prospective sponsors who can provide funding at a level that's pretty robust. We also see that there's an opportunity for them, of course, to ally themselves with a global idea, a global broadcast that will be seen hopefully by quite a lot of people around the world. Again, like we say, we're giving a 3-day party, 6.9 billion invited. So we also go very deliberately into looking at who we think are reasonable sponsors for this, and let's just say, ExxonMobil or Monsanto may not be a good choice. We know they've got plenty of money, but we're not interested in that, really.
Yes.
But we are looking for what we call integrated sponsors who can speak to and support through their work, and through their focus in the world, and through their services or products, support women, water, and peace. That we can make linkages with, and also we know that part of that is somewhat. That we might need to bring some of these sponsors along to understand the importance of this theme, to understand how ancestors connect just to us, on a human level, on a just day-to-day level. How looking at traditional cultures is part of humanity. It's not just part of some romanticized kind of concept or some stereotyped kind of way of seeing people or humanity. But that there's a way to bring in. We feel very strongly there's a way to bring sponsorship money, whether it comes from corporations or whether it comes from individual donors that really see something important in this. We're looking at all different kinds of ways and all different kinds of formations of sponsorship. But there are some definite ones that we're talking to now, that we've had conversations with, and that we're hoping to develop relationships with, so we can bring this into being in a way. We feel that everyone we touch with this has to take a step up in the world, that everybody who's involved with this takes a step up in how they're supported by people around them, and whether that means the sponsors or whether that means our cultural partners, whether that means the artists that we bring to the stage and hopefully illuminate. We know that we're there to bring each other to a higher level of awareness and a higher level of support and agency.
Well, I described right at the beginning of our conversation that this project is enormously ambitious, and as you have sketched it out, I don't think anybody would be arguing with that. But I am struck by the parallels between, I'm thinking about, well, here we are at ACMi, right? And I know you're familiar and you're a fan of media, of local community media access. And what is it that we're all about? We are all about creating connection within our community. And it sounds to me like on an entirely different scale, on a global scale, you're, the essence of this in many ways is to create connection as well, to connect so that people understand, as you have said, that indigenous peoples don't exist only in the past, that they are all around us and living the same life, faced with the same issues as all the rest of us. That that good ideas and good projects are going on all over the world and need to be brought to light. And in all ways that a successful unrolling of the World Ancestor Concert will elicit in those who participate and those who view it in feeling a connection that they might not have felt to people and ideas over space and time that they might not have felt.
Exactly, and as you say that, we have to understand that, even this understanding of each other, and whether it be traditional cultures or whether it be women or other marginalized populations, that we see where we're at odds. And some of the voices that we tamp down oftentimes are certain populations saying, yes, we are at odds, because of privilege or oppression in different forms and different ways. And we need to understand how that happens. And we need to understand how, when we understand that different populations are at odds, how our humanity calls us to rectify those things, to bring resolution to those things, and how looking at not only our new ideas can help us to do that, but to acknowledge how, again, ancestral processes really inform us in how to do this in a really good way, because that's what a lot of the indigenous cultures, and I know that from the African perspective, and I can speak to that particularly and personally, that I'm tremendously informed by my spiritual life and by what my ancestors have brought to me, and how moving forward in this world can be done in a beautiful way, that it's possible to do this, that it's possible to be in good relationship with each other. And again, I can speak loosely to that in the African context, because there's some of that coming out of the San culture in what many people have called pygmies or other names that are now that we know are pejorative, but how the San people have endemic to their culture ways of being in relationship to each other that show respect for each other, to the elders, to children, to each other's healing, to each other's experience, that have created a beauty in that culture that sometimes we don't see because they just don't dress like us, or they don't have cell phones, or they don't drive a car at all, that kind of thing. So our ability to look back again to acknowledge our ancestors' lives and beautiful creations is a way to see beauty forward for us in this world now. And to not see it in a, like a woo-woo kind of, let's just sit around and,
So
kind of hold
kumbaya,
hands again.
yeah.
Right, right. But in a really grounded way that is actually hard. Really hard.
Very hard, yes.
But that, not giving the process over just to sitting in a room and talking, but to hearing how each other sings and dances about our best future possible is really important. To bring social movement into our bodies, into our voices in a different way. Spoken word. There's some people that we would love to have in this concert that are amazing, that would be, like we might call it a barn burner or a showstopper, but that we know are going to just light people up in a way that that we feel humanity needs right now, and that we feel is entirely possible.
Well, when I say, in this case, good luck to you in this endeavor, I mean it in the most profound way.
Yeah,
because I do think that you've taken an absolutely enormous thing on here. But how could it not be really, really good for all of us if you can pull it off?
Thank you.
And so, from myself, from ACMi, truly, best of luck with this. We'll, of course, want to be keeping tabs and expecting to hear from you and sit down with you, even as we get closer to the event.
We hope people will connect with us on what we call our global media network. We do have a website, worldancestorconcert.com, and we hope people will connect with that. We hope people will see that. We hope people will connect with our blog and connect with us and talk to each other. It's not just about talking with us. It's about talking to each other and seeing each other's human stories and being able to see each other in a different way and be able to walk together in peace on the earth together. We think it's possible.
Amen. And thank you for that.
Thank you, Ashe.
We are talking about the World Ancestor Concert. He is Ukumbwa Sauti. I am James Milan. Thanks for joining us.